Hello everyone, good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing good. I'll be just waiting whether we were live or not. If everyone can see as well as hear me, I just would like to see some confirmation on that. So then we'll be starting the session, okay? Hope everyone can see as well as hear me. Okay, right. So thanks for the confirmation. Now I would be starting the session today. So the session that we are going to start today is nothing but the one of the most important and also interesting topic under the concept related to the science and technology. And the topic that I'll be taking is called as a biotechnology. So before we start today's discussion and understand something more about the biotechnology today, I just would like to let you all know that in the recent past, the importance of science and technology has been like tremendously increased, especially when it comes to the preliminary examination. You all must have seen it very well about how the things were going on when it comes to the recent preliminary examination. And yes, science and technology has been playing a very important role when it comes to clearing the exam and all. So when in any of these perspectives, yes, it has been very, very, very important. So today, the biotechnology is one such a kind of topic in the science and technology where we could expect at least 1 or 2 questions for sure in any preliminary examination. So today we are going to start the discussion on that topic, the biotechnology. And before we start the discussion with respect to the biotechnology, we will be taking it in 2 parts. So today it will be part 1 and tomorrow at the same time you'll also be having the part 2. Okay. So before we start, I just would like to let you all know about certain kind of things related to the Unacademy. And one of the greatest opportunity that Unacademy is giving to all of you is this, the Aspire test. Unacademy Aspire is all India free and open test where any aspirant could actually join us and write the test on live. So once that is done, if you are in the top 50, Unacademy would be giving you different kind of benefits. They will be giving you prizes, they will be giving you some scholarships. So that would help you a lot in your preparation too. So when it goes further, Unacademy comes across with different kind of batch courses so that you would be able to join any of these batches and be acquainted with respect to preparation in your own language. So be it the bilingual, be it English or be it Hindi. Any of these things could be joined where you have different kind of batch courses which will be starting from 23rd of November. So you have 1 year batch course, 1.5 year batch course and all. The interesting thing is this, you all can access any of these courses by any educator on an Unacademy platform when it comes to UPSC category, just with a single subscription. And yes, you have a structured batches with different kind of top educators. You have Hindi, English as well as bilingual batches too. Where for the working professionals, we also have late night batches. And you can join Unacademy using the referral code which is highlighted here for taking the subscription, and you would be getting a 10% off on the Unacademy Plus subscription. Okay, so you could see the referral code which is highlighted here, that is Ajay MYT10. So now let's get into the topic of the day. I said you the topic that we'll be discussing today is the concept related to the biotechnology, and I said that it is the one of the most important topic under the area of the science and technology. So bio and technology, very interesting characteristics we have. A very, very interesting thing when it comes to bio and technology. Bio indicates life and technology indicates the technological things that we'll be using. So how both of these could be used and what is the benefit of these, and can we use it in any domain or is it restricted to certain domains? So how is it going to be helpful for us? So we'll have a better understanding. We'll try our best. About 90% that is something which we can actually see. We cannot cover everything, but the point is we'll try our best to completely cover all the topic related to the biotechnology. That is something we'll be looking after. So first, for anything, for the life that we are talking, I've mentioned that bio indicates life. This is something which I was telling about. When we hear about what is it called bio and say that it is related to the life, there are unicellular organisms, there are multicellular organisms. In any of these particular organisms, the point you have to understand here is very clear, that if that is a unicellular organism, a single cell can do all the functions of that particular organism. When I mention about a unicellular organism, so that would be covering all the functions of the entire organism, only single cell will be doing it. But when it comes to multicellular organisms, each cell may have their own specific purpose. So hello Abhinesh, we would be taking the sessions for about 10 hours or so. We'll be taking in this month, and we'll continue that in the coming months also. It's not that we'll be ending it. So we'll be covering many topics under the science and technology. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. So now in this area, I was telling you about the multicellular organisms. Each and every cell in a body of a multicellular organism, you would be having different functionality by different particular bodies. Yes, different cells will have different function. It's like the nerve cell that I have in the brain cannot do the function that could be done by other cell. So each and every cell would have their own purpose. When we talk about the behavior of the cells, when we talk about how the functionality of the cells, and before all these things, we have to understand something very interesting about the genetic structure of a human being. If you want to know about genetic structure of a human being, we have to know about the basic component, that is the gene. That is a gene. We often call cell as a basic unit of life. Right? It is a basic unit of life. That is something which should be started from that. When we go further, the gene is something which would decide what would be your characteristics. The genetic structure we often call is nothing but the passing away of genes from one organism to the other organism, from, like could say, parents to children. This is something which we could actually look after. So the genes are one of the basic important part of the life, which is a part of cell, in fact. So the genes are those kind of hereditary characteristics which could be coming from the parents to the children. So we often say, this child looks like his mother, this child looks like her father. How are you going to decide it? It is because of the genes which will be coming or passed from the parent offsprings to the children. So this is something which we see in general, very, very common thing. And within the gene, we have a specific area. In the entire genetic structure, you must have heard about DNA, RNA and all. So I'll not be going in details of DNA and RNA, because we'll try to refrain ourselves. Our restriction will be completely related to the biotechnology. But yes, DNA and RNA is a part of this entire genetic structure. So these are certain kind of nucleotides which would have their own specific purpose. These will lead to certain kind of the characteristics passing that is happening in that. But you often find a very interesting case called as genetic disorder. What is called a genetic disorder? So when we hear about a genetic disorder, it is something, a difference, it is something, a kind of issue that these people would be having in the genes of a person. A person who is born with one gene, after few years, because of any of the reasons, the genes cannot function properly. And this problem could be there right from the birth of the person, or that could come in between. But in general, we know very well that the human beings are the people who are the result of the kind of things that would be coming, the genetic structure that would be coming from the parent to the children. So these genes which we are talking about are a kind of these are carried on what is it called a chromosome. So chromosome is something which would be coming, and the gene is a part of this particular chromosome. And yes, we humans have about 46 chromosomes, which we divide them into 23 pairs. And when it comes to this particular pairs, as I said you, 23 pairs. In these 23 pairs in particular, we could talk about the pairs from 1 to 22. It will not have any impact on the child. In particular, for example, if a person is there, to determine what should be the gender of that person, what is the birth gender of the person. For example, if a child is born, if the child is a baby girl, if a child is a baby girl, or if a child is a baby boy. So this is something which will be decided based on the 23rd pair. So when I say pair, it is a combination of two chromosomes. So if you are seeing the birth of a boy, it is involving a pair of XY. The 23rd pair is the XY pair chromosome. So that is something which would determine that the baby is a boy. Similarly, if that is an X pair chromosome, that indicates the baby is a girl. So this is a very important and a common thing that you all must have studied in the science of the class 6 to class 9, class 6 to class 10, or even you must have studied in some parts of class 11 and 12. So this is the basic thing that you find when it comes to any kind of a child that we are seeing. Now there are certain kind of chances now. So I was telling you about what is it called a genetic disorders. And a genetic disorder is something which could be starting right from the child, or this is the first case. Second case, this is something which could have directly come from the parents to this child. Isn't it? That is also the case. The parents to the child could also be there. If the parents are the carriers of a genetic disease, there is a chance that could be taken to the child. And now, if the parents could be carriers, which means they are not affected, but they are carrying some genetic disorder. I'll tell you in the pictorial representation as we go further about the genetic disorders. So parents could be carriers, parents could be unaffected, or parents could be affected. There are three different kind of chances about how the parents could be. In case, if the parents are the carriers of the genetic disease, they are not affected, nor they are, we could say, they are not the ones who are unaffected. If they are the carriers of some genetic disease, there is a chance the children could be carriers, the children could be affected, the children could be unaffected. There are three cases of that. Now, let's look into a pictorial one, for example. Let's say we are talking about a father. So father is nothing but the pair called, what pair that it shows us when it comes to father? It is XY. Am I right? Then when it comes to mother, it is XX. Let's say this father is a carrier and here the mother is also a carrier, which means one among them. So in this XY, one is affected, other is not. Okay, and it could be anything. It could be Y could be safe, or X is affected, or any of these three could be there. Only if one is affected, other is not, then the person could be a carrier only. If none of these are affected, then that will be unaffected. And if both are affected, then that parent would become the affected. Isn't it? This is a very common thing. So if you look at this case, there are different kind of scenarios that we could come across. For example, this example shows you that there is a carrier father and a carrier mother. These people are not the affected people. These people are the carriers, which means they are bringing certain kind of genetic disease from one generation to other generation. So what would happen now? The chromosomal pair which is coming from the side of father and mother. So for example, there is a chance the child could be unaffected. There is a chance the child could be carriers, and there is a chance the child could be affected. In what circumstances this could be? If both of these particular, chromosomal pairs, let's say X is not affected here, X is not affected here. Okay. So if both X's are coming here which are not affected, definitely the child will not be affected. Isn't it? That's a very common thing. But for example, I said you here Y is affected, here X is affected. So one is affected and one is not affected. For example, here Y is affected, I said, but the first X is not affected. So when this not affected and affected are coming, so that child would become a carrier only. The child is not going to be affected. Similarly, the same case here, the other way around. But here, if both affected, that is Y and X, which are both affected, are coming, here the child would become the affected child only. This is a very common case. Now, this example is for those when you have a carrier father and a carrier mother. For example, let's check the next example. If you could see this example here, it shows you this particular way where the father is unaffected. So he has a healthy pair of chromosome where the mother is a carrier. So the pink X, let's say the pink X is an affected X. So what happens now? The father is unaffected. So the father here is getting, like this child, if you are seeing here, he is getting the X from mother and Y from father. So he is unaffected. The daughter we are talking about, she's getting the X, the blue X, and this X from the father, she is unaffected. But here the second part, when you come across the X which is affected and the X which is not affected, in the case of this, the daughter would become a carrier daughter only. She is not affected here. But when it comes to the son, here the son is getting an affected X and unaffected Y. In this case also, the son would become an affected son. If you could see, there is an exception. What is that? Here the daughter who is getting one X which is affected, she is becoming a carrier. But here the son who is getting only one X which is affected, here he is becoming an affected. What is the reason here? Because of the dominance that we have, that of X chromosome here. So here in the case of daughter, if this X is unhealthy, but this another X is there to support her, so definitely she is going to become a carrier. So this is one reason you have to understand that why most of the genetic diseases where the males would be more affected than that of women. Men are more affected than that of women. This is the best example. Now let's look into another case. I'll tell you another case today now. So other case goes like this. So for example, let's say there is a brother and a sister. Okay, there is a brother and sister. So which means they are coming from a same parent. So now, if these brother and sisters, let's say they are the carriers. They are the carriers of a genetic disorder. If this brother and sister are the carriers of a genetic disorder, so what is it going to happen now as we go further? So this brother and sister are the carriers of genetic disorder, as I said you. So what would be the result here is this. There is a chance that both this brother and sister could be carriers, and when they are carriers, let's say the brother is A and sister is B. Okay, both of them have a different kind of chromosomal pairs, and they are they are the carriers. Let's say brother has a son and a daughter, daughter also have a son and daughter. So now what will this daughter and son will become? These become in-laws. So there is a system that we have in India that in-laws getting married. Yes, this is a very common thing. So what is the reason why the in-laws getting married is generally not that encouraged in India? The major reason here is this, because there is a chance this particular chromosomes which are getting from the carriers could be affecting these particular children. So there is a greater chance the next generation of children could become the genetic disorders could be affecting them. So that is something which could be seen in this particular case. Okay, so that is I would like to mention about the genetic disorders first in the discussion of the biotechnology. So now I'll move to the second part of this, we'll continue that. So when I say biotechnology, bio is indicating the life and we'll use with the support of technology. So you would use a biological process to get certain kind of thing done. And what is that? Why do you do that? The major purpose is this: you have to bring a greater change here. You have to improve the quality of certain thing. You could use that in the case of industrial purpose. You could use that in the medical, agricultural, or any other purposes too. This is something which you could be doing here. But the point here is this: when we go further, now these could be used in the case of engineering, or these could be used in the case of biological sciences. But you are going to use both of them, and what is the result that you want to get here is this: you want to produce a new raw material which is of a biological source. That is one of the reason why you will be focusing on these kind of things. So biotechnology is certain area where you want to improve, where you want to see a change in such a way that the biological process would be used, where we try to improve the lives of the people. That is the most important thing why we will be talking about these particular things. Okay, now moving on, why do we need the biotechnology now? Why do we need? Is it really that important? So why do we need this kind of area? The most important thing, the biotechnology would help you about the process of inheritance. What is that coming from one generation to other? How is it going from one generation to other? The properties or the process related to the inheritance could be understood very well under this particular area. So that is number one. And now there are many issues with respect to the humans. There are a lot of issues that we have where people face various diseases here. So these diseases need to be taken care. We have to treat these particular people. So how we could do? These are genetic disorders which needs a treatment, and you have to do that with the support of biotechnology. So treatment of certain kind of things which cannot be done in general perspective. So you have to do that. So that would be done with the support of biotechnology. And it's not just for the treatment. It's not just for the inheritance alone. Then we talk about what is it called genetically modified crops often. So when we talk about genetically modified crops in an often way, where we keep on discussing about genetically modified crops, how is that being done? Because of this. So you would try to get a certain kind of economic benefits. You want to ensure that the plants and animals which are there would get you the better production of the things whatever you get here. So better agriculture, we say, pest resistant crops, certain kind of things could be created through the biotechnological purpose itself. So that is the most important thing here under the goals. Now, moving on. How do you use biotechnology? So that would decide variety of things for us. So for example, we do have different kind of branches of biotechnology. One we call it as bioinformatics. Then we have as blue biotechnology, green biotechnology, red biotechnology, and white biotechnology. When we talk about all these different sort of things here, so this would indicate different kind of methods how you are using the biotechnology. So bioinformatics. So when you hear the word called informatics, it must be very clear for you. You would be using with the support of a computer. A computer would be used for helping you in the areas related to the biotechnology. So that is the most important thing. We call it as bioinformatics, which is also called as gold biotechnology. And the other name that we also have here, it is called as computational biology, where you try to combine both the computer as well as biotechnology. You try to include the biological data. If I'm using this biological data to analyze certain kind of things, so that is something which could bring, we would try to get some information from that biological sample, and this analysis could be done very well. So that is how it is going to be changing for us. You would try to analyze this. You would also use this to know about how the things are going, to understand the impact of the biotechnology. The proper analysis is needed, and then you'd be using these computers to improve the fertility of the crops and plants, have a better study of them, to deal with the pest, drought, and the resistance to these kind of diseases. So we would use the usage of computer and biotechnology would be done a lot in the area related to the pharmaceutical sector. So that makes it a very, very important thing. Okay, so this is about the bioinformatics. If you could just give me 1 minute, please. Then we'll move on to the next part, blue biotechnology. So I'm sure when you hear the word called blue, for many of the people that would indicate a sky or that would indicate water. So we are going to go with the second part now, that is indicating with support to the water. So blue biotechnology is certain kind of branch of biotechnology where you used to use or create certain kind of products in the support of biotechnology, but You have to get them from the water. The source of what you are going to create would be a sea resource. Now someone would come and ask me, sir, you are saying that you are going to say that exploit the sea resources to create certain kind of products. Yes, that is what I mean. But now you may ask me, if this indiscriminate exploitation which you are saying could lead to certain kind of impact on the maritime environment, marine species. Yes, you are absolutely true. So in certain kind of cases, that's why they say you have to go with the sea resources only when you don't find an alternative or equivalent found on the land. Only then you have to go with this. So that is what they indicate here. So it could be used in the areas especially like biofuels, the drugs, the anti-cancer drugs which are derived from the sea, the painkillers. In all these cases, you could be using this area called blue biotechnology. Then we have a next one called green biotechnology. So green, yeah, greenery, it's nothing but agriculture purpose. The biggest problem that the farmers in India are facing are the agriculture affected with the pest, the agriculture affected with the drought, isn't it? This is something which people are facing a lot of problems. So here we would try to use what is it called, the area related to the biotechnology, especially for the agricultural purposes. You would select the right quality of plants, and then with the support of technologies like micropropagation and also the transgenic plants, you try to make certain kind of change here. So that would create more crops which are fertile, more crops which are drought resistant and pest resistant. So when you have a crops which are drought resistant and pest resistant, what could it lead to? It could deal with the biggest problem of the world right now, the hunger. The world is dreaming, in fact the world is aiming to get zero hunger zero hunger by 2030. When the world is really aiming to get zero hunger by 2030, and you are, because of the COVID and all, the number of people who are getting affected is increased, the people who don't have proper food. So it is really very tough to reach zero hunger by 2030. But yes, to make it at least possible to step in this direction, what is most important here, what we could do is this: go with what is it called, this kind of green biotechnology. Use the biotechnology in the domain of agriculture, create friendly fertilizers, create the biopesticides which would not be affecting the species but also could derive a great yield. So that is the concept related to the green biotechnology. Then we'll move to the what is it called as red biotechnology. So red generally indicates a danger. So it is nothing but you would be using the biotechnology in the domain of medical and pharmaceutical purposes. So how are you going to use? You would focus on creating the new drugs and antibiotics, creation of artificial organs, new diagnostics. For example, we call a very popular technique called stem cell therapy is a part of this red biotechnology. So we'll talk about stem cell therapy in the biotechnology class as we go further. As I said you that today it is part 1 of biotechnology. So tomorrow that will be taken as the part 2 also. Okay. Tomorrow at same time we'll be having part 2. So don't forget to attend that also. Then we have is white biotechnology, which would indicate a part of industrial biotechnology. So it's a part of industrial thing. So this is something which is used and applied in the industries and its processes. To get certain kind of things faster, we generally use what is it called catalyst in a chemical reactions, isn't it? Similarly, you use here the enzymes in the industries. So when you use these particular enzymes, the resultant would be that where the resources that would be consumed for getting this thing done would be very less resources. The biopolymers, bringing of new fibers, like for example we are wearing different kind of clothes. So with the support of this you could bring a new fibers for the clothing industry. So new production processes, all these things would be brought up. So these are the different kind of branches. There are many more things too, but these are extremely important for us to know about the branches related to the biotechnology. And how are you going to use them? biopharmaceuticals. What is it called? Biopharmaceuticals. Using the biological thing, you would create certain kind of pharmaceutical products. So where you use the microorganisms which are a part of biology, they do have a life, isn't it? So with the support of these microorganisms, which are either half or fully synthesized, you'd focus on creating this kind of biopharmaceuticals that would destroy the foreign material, the any kind of foreign material that is entering into our body, which is definitely not a part of our body, so definitely it's a foreign. So without any side effects, the biopharmaceuticals are the one which could focus on attacking that particular foreign material and ensure that you be healthy. It could be used to treat variety of diseases. It could be hepatitis, it could be cancer, bone fractures and all. And the first approved such kind of drug is called as Herceptin, which is generally used to treat what is it called, the breast cancer. That is the benefit of what is it called, the biopharmaceuticals. Here comes a very important concept called pharmacogenomics. Interesting area actually, the pharmacogenomics. So let's take a case of three people. I keep saying this particular example, but yes, it is very interesting and this is one way to make it easy for you. The people, I named them as A, B and C. Okay. So this person A, let's say his age is 25 years. There is a person called B, his age is 80 years. And there is a person called C, his age is 2 years. All these three people have now got what is it called, they are affected with the fever. Okay, they are affected with the fever. All these went to a doctor, and the doctor name, let's say his name is Mr. Y, Dr. Y. And this Dr. Y, if this person, all of them go to the doctor and say that, doctor, we are suffering with fever for the past 2 to 3 days. So what will the doctor do? Will he write the same medicines to all these people? Like go take Dolo 650 to all? Can this be done by the doctor? Will the doctor do this? Yes guys, what do you think? You can answer in the comment section, by the way. Do you think the doctor would do this? Yes, whoever is watching live, you could actually do comment this. So definitely the doctor won't allow that. The doctor won't give this kind of suggestion. Why? Because the people are from different age group. So sometimes, if you remember in your childhood, doctors used to ask the children to take half of the tablet. Why is that? So the dosage, isn't it? So that is one thing which is very clear, that a single medicine cannot be used for all. Similarly, in certain kind of diseases. Okay, Shubham is here. Very good to know, Shubham. So in certain kind of diseases, now what happens? A single medicine cannot be used. So many drugs cannot be used for this way called one size fit all approach cannot work. So this needs to be changed. And we often find the genes of a people, like the way they respond to different medicines would also be different. So what do you do here? As part of it, you would combine the area of pharmacology. So it is nothing but related to the pharmacy, and you would involve the genomics. So what do you do now? If I'm taking a medicine, how my genes are responding to that medicine. So you would combine both these areas. So what happens now? If I have a disease, so I would create a certain kind of medicine which is specially created for me. And my genetic response would be appropriate. So they would develop an effective, safe medication and a dose which is tailored according to a person's genetics. So this is the area called pharmacogenomics. Okay, so this is what we call it as a pharmacogenomics. Then we have is gene therapy. In certain kind of cases, the medicines cannot address all the problems of a people. So you have to go much beyond that. You have to treat the disease using the genes. So if a person has been diagnosed with certain kind of disease, it is very tough for the doctors. Like it's a most invasive thing is that opening the body, cutting open, doing the surgery is the most invasive thing. So the gene therapy is going to be one certain kind of technique where the doctors could treat a disorder rather than cutting them and all or providing them the kind of drugs. They can insert a gene into the cell of a patient, and that gene would do the thing. So if there is a gene which is mutated, which is undergoing certain kind of changes, that is something which is causing a kind of impact on the entire body. The healthy genes are getting affected. So what the doctors could do, they could inactivate that particular mutated gene and insert a new gene into the body so that this could go and fight that particular disease. So that is the other common thing that we hear when it comes to the gene therapy, the one of the most important application of biotechnology. Then what do we have is here called as genetic testing. See how we do a genetic test, the gene test we could say. It is something which could tell me about the changes in the chromosomes of the people, the changes in the proteins of a people or the genes of a people. So this genetic test will confirm or it will rule out a suspected genetic condition. What is genetic condition? What is a suspected genetic condition? It will either confirm or rule out certain kind of case. And this is something which should determine the person's chance of how are they developing or passing a genetic disorder. If a person is developing a genetic disorder and how is it passing on to the next generations. So that is something which could be understood very well with a concept related to the genetic testing. And that genetic testing could be of the molecular genetic test, that could be of a chromosomal genetic test or a biochemical genetic test. You have different kind of genetic tests. When it comes to biotechnology, I said you that it is one of the most important area and it could actually help you in very interestingly in the diagnostic sciences too. It can keep a track, it can also examine what the DNA of a person from a blood sample, just from the blood sample of a person, it could examine the DNA of a person. It could also be used to determine what would be the gender of an unborn baby. And it could be used to screen the baby for what is it called the Down syndrome. So Down syndrome is one certain kind of disorder where there are more genetic, more chromosomal pairs would be happening, which will have an impact on the child once the child is born. So generally Down syndrome screening is done before the birth of a baby so that they could keep a track on how the change is happening in the baby's life. So that is a prenatal diagnostic testing, newborn screening and the forensic testing. You have different kind of these things. So guys, if you could just give me 1 minute, okay? I'll just check this. 1 second. So then we have us in the agriculture, food processing, DNA fingerprinting and all. So yeah, we'll just take up three more topics and then we'll end it, okay? So I think we have already completed 40 minutes of the session today. So now in the case of agriculture, why do you have to use the biotechnology? Why do you have to use biotechnology? A very important thing, you see a drought coming up many times, right? So you need to be drought resistant. So increased crop productivity, the productivity of a crop has to be increased. So these has to be disease resistant and also they must have a drought tolerance. They should be able to tolerate this particular drought. If there are certain kind of crops and plantation which I am doing, so now if they are affected with the lack of water, water is definitely going to be shortage in the near future with the increased population. So we cannot let it be continued this way. You need to bring certain kind of changes which should be able to withstand the drought, which is going to withstand certain kind of diseases. That is one way. Why do you use in agriculture? And the second thing we also have is this, the nutritional value. The nutritional value of these crops. For example, you must have heard about golden rice, which is nothing but it would promote it is synthesized with what is it called, a protein called beta carotene, which would allow more vitamin A to get into this particular people's body with this consumption of the golden rice. That is a very interesting case. And then you could also create that for reducing the pesticide dependence, and you could also go ahead with the biofortified crops. That means you would have a higher quantity of vitamins and micronutrients, so which means there will be no malnutrition present at this place. So that is how and why do you use the biotechnology in the area of agriculture. Then we'll have is food processing. It would be really surprised to know that how the food processing keeps going here. In general cases, the food processing, like we all have a lot of processed foods actually. A lot of processed foods would be consumed. For example, people when they are actually dealing with certain kind of things, they would actually go and have the chips, like we often hear Lay's chips and all. That's a processed food too. So what is this food processing? So there are certain kind of things. When I go to a market to purchase certain kind of, let's say, tomatoes, if the person says that the tomatoes are this much per kg, let's say the person is saying 20 rupees per kg, and what do? You bargain, isn't it? That is something which we often find. When the people keep bargaining with these kind of things, what will be the result of that? Yeah, people keep bargaining. But when these tomatoes go to the processing and comes out as a ketchup, and if they say 50 rupees per a small packet of ketchup, and you won't bargain, you will see MRP, date of manufacturing, chalo, give it. So this is the kind of situation that we are seeing, isn't it? So these are generally easily perishable. So but why do you do the food processing? So that the life of these things could be there and expended for longer time. For this to happen, you use a process called fermentation, which is nothing but chemical breakdown of the substances with the support of bacteria, yeast, and certain kind of things. About 1/3 of the food that we consume today is a fermented food. And if we don't do the proper fermentation, that would lead to contamination of the food, so which would be a problem. And why the biotechnology is here? The biotechnology is here right now because it talks about the storage, edibility of that, aroma of that, and the nutritional value of that particular food. So this would help you in the protein engineering. You would use certain kind of enzymes which are produced in large scale. You would actually culture the microorganisms, and these fermented foods, you want to store their flavor and nutritional value. For example, we all use yeast in the baking, beverage production and all. So these are the common things. So these kind of tools would actually help us in improving the culturing with them and the nutritional value of these kind of things. So I think we will then we have the next thing called DNA fingerprinting. It's nothing but the DNA test. So what happens in the case of DNA fingerprinting now? So why and what cases that we will be using DNA fingerprinting? Yes, anyone would like to tell me? Yes, I think we have Aradhya, Shubham, and yeah, some more people are also there. So I could just see these people are only commenting. Yeah, Abhinesh also, by the way. Right. So now, in general, this particular thing, the DNA fingerprinting is used mostly for identification of an individual. For example, we keep talking about DNA test. So there was a popular case here. Yes, there is a popular case here. You must have heard about a case of ND Tiwari. So ND Tiwari, the former, the former governor of the state of Andhra Pradesh, and he was also the former chief minister of UP, Uttarakhand, and all, I guess. Right? So this person has certain kind of case with respect to his child came across with a paternity case and all. So where he says that I'm the son of this guy, and this person says no, I don't have any children. So now he went to the court, and the court asked them to get the DNA test done, and it is proven that this person is his son. That is common. So the DNA, when we talk about the DNA fingerprinting, the DNA is the one which would give every information about a particular organism, where it is something which should transfer certain kind of characteristics from one generation to the next generation. But how can that be done? People often think DNA test could be done only with the support of blood sample, but it is not just with the blood sample. It could be done with the bones of the person, with the hair that we generally say, sometimes you must be seeing that in CID, people take the hair and send it for forensic testing. But yes, for that to be done, the hair must have a root. For getting a root, it is not that easy. If you see the hair, if that has with root, only then you would be able to do the DNA test. The saliva of a person, the semen, the teeth, and all. So what are the uses for that? For identifying of the criminals, disputes of maternity and paternity. Sometimes the child come and say, he is my son, he is my father, he is my mother, she is my mother, but yet they won't accept. So that kind of disputes. So now in the government hospitals, you must be seeing this particular case. many a times that the babies in the hospitals are getting exchanged. So in certain kind of cases, what happens now? So we have to do this. So then in the case of forensics also, and it is not that easy to be done, it generally requires a court order to be done, and generally done under the supervision of the authorities or from the police as well as from the court. So that's all for the topic I'll be taking for the discussion. We'll take up remaining topics like biosensor, genetic engineering, then we'll say insulin production. We have much more interesting topics to be taken up tomorrow. Okay, so that's it for the day. I think tomorrow again at exactly 2 p.m. we'll be back. And guys, if anyone is interested in Unacademy plus subscription, please do use the referral code which is highlighted here to join it, and also do check out the batch courses. We have various batch courses and all. So thank you so much for joining. Hoping to see you all tomorrow again at 2 p.m. Take care and have a great day. Everyone, take care. Bye bye.